I've always been the one who caught things early, a low balance, a missed payment. The way Dad's voice changed when he needed something. I noticed everything quietly. That's who I was. That's who they expected me to be. So when the alert came at 2:17 a.m., I didn't panic. I stared at the number for a long time. 38 11567. Withdrawn. Gone. At first, I thought it was fraud. Some stranger, some glitch. But the longer I looked, the more a different thought settled in one I didn't want to name yet. I sat up in bed. My chest was tight, not from fear, but from recognition. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 31. I work in hospital admin, and for most of my life I've been the one who could be counted on until I realized they weren't counting with me. Just on me. I called my father George before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on speaker. I could hear my mother Donna laughing in the background. Some old country song playing in the kitchen. "Hey, Dad. Something's wrong with my bank account," I said. "My card's maxed out." "Did something happen?" There was a pause. A clink of glass. Then his voice tired and patient. "You're always so dramatic, Claire. The family needed help. Your mom's prescriptions went up. Your sister's car broke down. We were behind on the mortgage. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Then Mom chimed in same tone she used when I forgot to call on Easter. Light, cutting. Besides honey, what were you gonna do? Buy yourself cake and candles? You can celebrate alone. We had better plans." I remember the silence after that more than their voices. It felt final. "And maybe it was," I said calmly. "Then don't ever call me again." Then I hung up, not out of anger, but because I knew deep down they'd already made that choice first, long before I did. And the thing about betrayal is it rarely screams. Most of the time it sounds like laughter in the background and a country song on the radio. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or scream into a pillow. That's not how it worked for me. I just sat there staring at the number again and then opened my laptop. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I remembered something Dad once said to me after I covered his second DUI fine family doesn't keep score. It was a clever thing to say, and it worked because I wanted to believe it. So I stopped keeping score. But that night, I started reading the ledger, the real one. I logged into every account with my name on it, mortgage mine. They couldn't qualify after the bankruptcy. I had co-signed 5 years ago just until things got stable again. They never did. Auto loan in my name. The truck my sister Haley drove like it was hers, it was, technically. But only because I carried the weight. The insurance, too. Medical loan mine, approved because of my employer's credit union perks. Mom used my identity like a lifeline. Quietly, often. I moved through each tab with the same stillness I'd once used to set up autopay. Back then, it felt like love, like responsibility. Now, it felt like consent I never truly gave. So, I started clicking mortgage canceled. I'd already made the last 3 payments myself. Truck called the bank, repossession in process, medical loan frozen, claimed financial duress. Each action wasn't loud, but it echoed, not in the room, but in me. I opened the shared streaming apps, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, the family phone plan, utilities still in my name, everything they'd quietly hooked into me like IV lines. I pulled the plug, not out of spite, but out of clarity. They had taken what they needed without asking because they assumed the asking wasn't necessary, because I'd trained them not to ask. And I wondered, how many times had I said, "I'm fine," when I wasn't, just to keep the peace? How many birthdays had I covered while they forgot mine? How many late-night transfers did I make while they slept soundly in a house I paid for? They called it family. But the way they used me, it looked more like billing. That night, I didn't sleep. But I didn't cry either. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it simply History. And for the first time in years, I started saving the receipts. The first time I realized I wasn't the child in my family was a Tuesday. I was 12. It was spring, still cold in the mornings. I remember the light flickering in the kitchen. Not dramatic, just dim. Mom was sitting at the table holding an envelope she hadn't opened yet. I knew the color, pale yellow with red print, the electric bill. She didn't cry right away. That always came later. First, she'd sigh, look down at her hands, tap the envelope once then twice like it might change if she waited long enough. "Claire," she said without looking up, "can you run and grab the change jar from the closet I did?" She opened it, counted quarters, dimes. Then she sat back, eyes wet but still dry. That was her trick sad without sound. "We're gonna be okay," she said, but I knew we weren't. That afternoon I walked to Miss Lorraine's salon 3 blocks down. The owner was old and sweet, and once told me I folded towels neater than her niece. I asked if she needed help. She looked at me for a second too long, then said, "What do you know about sweeping up hair?" I said enough. I swept every day after school for $4 an hour. Not because anyone told me to, but because it felt like someone had to. That summer the lights stayed on. Mom called it a miracle. Dad said, "That's our girl always steps up." They never asked why I did it. And I never told them it was the first time I felt safer being the adult in the room. Some kids have first recitals, first trophies, first kisses. I had first responsibility, and it never really stopped. Looking back now, I think that was the moment the shift happened. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly. The child they were raising became the roof over their heads, and the scariest part, I thought that was love. I used to keep their messages, the sweet ones, the "we're proud of you" texts, the "you're our miracle" Claire voicemails. I'd scroll through them when work got heavy or birthdays got quiet. Mom once wrote, "We don't say it enough, but you're everything we ever hoped for." I used to cry reading that. Not because it made me sad, but because it made me feel seen. Like all those extra shifts, all those quiet sacrifices, had meaning. But the thing about words, they don't hold up well when you stack them next to action. Because while those messages were calling me a blessing, the bills were still coming to my name. The passwords were still mine. The rent reminders, the insurance renewals, the overdraft notices they never told me about until it was too late. I went back to the history folder that night. Opened a bank statement from 2 years ago. They'd charged my card for Mom's birthday dinner when I wasn't even invited to, then another. Haley's tire replacement, then streaming upgrades, then wine. Every transaction was small. But it wasn't the dollar amount that broke me. It was the pattern, the quiet expectation, the belief that I would cover the gap because I always had. And if I didn't, they'd say I'd changed. That success made me cold. That I'd forgotten where I came from, but I remembered exactly where I came from. I came from notices taped to our door, from watching Mom fake seizures in the ER to get out of copays, from Dad calling every borrowed dollar a gift so it wouldn't feel like debt. And somewhere along the line, I became their proof of redemption, the one who made it so they didn't have to explain why they hadn't. Every family photo on Facebook I was tagged. Every success story I was the headline. But behind the scenes, I was also the budget line, their miracle child, with a ledger. That night I took screenshots, printed statements, labeled folders, not out of spite, but because gaslighting is easier when you don't keep records, and I was tired of being told I was lucky to give. So I started keeping receipts, literal ones, emotional ones, all of it, because I needed something to hold on to when the memory of being loved no longer felt real. The voicemail came 3 days later. I was folding laundry listening to the soft tumble of the dryer when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then I played it just once. "Claire, it's your mom. Your dad fell, slipped on the porch steps. They say it's a bad break. He's at county. No insurance and they won't do the surgery unless we cover part of the cost. I know you're upset, but this is serious. This is family. Please, just call us. 3 minutes. That's all we ask." Her voice was thin, calculated. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she wanted to pull me back. Not with love, but with urgency. Not with apology, but need. And that was always the bait. This is family, as if that phrase erased everything before it. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop. I pulled up my budget, my accounts, my emergency fund. Yes, I could pay it. Easily. It wouldn't break me financially, but it might reopen everything else. So I opened the history folder again, scrolled through screenshots, the time they overdrew my account without asking, the Christmas I spent alone while they tagged each other in family photos, the $38,000 they withdrew on my birthday and called it helping the family, and I realized something that made me colder than I expected. This emergency didn't belong to me. It belonged to the people who had treated me like a debit card for years, people who never apologized, only pivoted, who said we love you with conditions buried in guilt. So no, I didn't call back. Instead, I wrote a check not to the hospital but to myself, a deposit into my peace fund, a reminder that I was allowed to choose myself, that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity, and the guilt, it knocked just like always. But this time I didn't open the door. I texted my cousin Amanda instead. She'd been forwarding me their group messages all week. I wrote, "Tell them I hope he heals, but I won't bleed again to fix their wounds." She didn't reply, just read it, and went silent. But that silence didn't ache this time. It felt like air. The group chat changed names the next day. It used to be called Whitmore Family Thread. Now it was Core Crew. I wasn't in it anymore. I didn't get a message, no notification. Amanda just sent me a screenshot. No caption. She didn't need one. That afternoon, screenshots kept coming. My mother had posted a Facebook status. "It's always your own who hurt you the deepest." No names. But the comments filled in the blanks. "You raised her too soft. She owes you everything. Kids today, no respect, no heart." And then the private messages started, from old aunts I hadn't seen since high school, from neighbors who once borrowed sugar and now passed judgment like scripture. "Claire, I know it's complicated, but they're still your parents. Your mother is heartbroken. You should be ashamed. Ashamed." That word echoed louder than any of them intended. Not because I agreed, but because for most of my life I had been. Ashamed of saying no. Ashamed of feeling tired. Ashamed of not being able to carry everyone without breaking. They were mourning something I realized. Not my father's leg. Not a family member lost to illness. They were mourning access. Access to my money. Access to my time. Access to the version of me who never asked for anything back. And I let them. I let them scream, grieve, lash out. Because grief at its core is just love with nowhere to go. But I wasn't their daughter anymore, not the one they'd shaped out of obligation and silence. And I didn't need to argue, didn't need to defend. Because this wasn't my funeral, it was theirs. The death of entitlement. The burial of the version of Claire they invented to survive. And I wasn't sending flowers. The invitation came in the mail, not through a group text. White envelope, gold trim, handwritten. It was from Ava, my younger cousin, the quiet one. She didn't ask questions when everything went down. Didn't forward gossip. Didn't press. Just sent the invite with a note, "If you come as yourself. That's all I want." So I went. I didn't buy a new dress. I wore black satin. Not to mourn, but to mark something. Not a funeral, but the closing of a door I no longer stood behind. When I walked into the reception hall, I felt them before I saw them. My parents. Dad in a rented tux leaning on a cane like it was part of the act. Mom in a dress 2 sizes too tight, dripping with borrowed jewelry and regret. Their eyes locked on me like I was late to something I had ruined. I didn't flinch. I took my seat next to Ava's college friends, laughed at inside jokes I didn't know, ate the chicken, complimented the centerpieces, and danced. God, I danced. Because joy in that moment wasn't decoration. It was defiance. Halfway through dinner, my mother passed behind my chair. She didn't stop walking, just let her fingers graze the top of the seat, her voice barely above a whisper. "You look different." I turned, met her eyes, then answered steady plain. "I am." She opened her mouth to say more, but I lifted my hand, not harsh, just final. "I'm here for Ava, not you." Her eyes didn't fill with grief. They filled with loss. The kind of loss that only arrives when you realize the bridge is already burned and the person on the other side is no longer waiting. Later during the toast, Dad raised his glass and scanned the room. When his eyes met mine, there was a flicker like he expected a nod, a smile, something to fold back into the old script. I didn't blink, because peace doesn't come from pretending nothing happened. It comes from knowing you don't owe anyone a return to the role they gave you. I left before dessert. No goodbyes, no final words. Just a walk to the car in heels that hurt and shoulders that didn't. And when I got home, I opened my laptop, logged into one last forgotten platform. Autopay, one click. And just like that, I took my childhood off repeat. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a list. Not a to-do list, not a debt tracker, just a list titled Things I Never Signed Up For. Co-signing the mortgage, covering Mom's dental implants, paying for Haley's car insurance just for 3 months, keeping the family Netflix account running for 6 years, answering every 11 p.m. phone call because someone didn't know who else to call, and then smoothing it all over, with my time, with my money, with my silence. I clicked through tabs like it was muscle memory, bank login, cell phone provider, streaming services, that one old gas account still in my name from 2019. Each one came with a memory I didn't want but couldn't forget. The time they threw me a birthday dinner? On my dime. The night Mom cried because the house wouldn't feel like home without internet, and I paid it again. The voicemail from Dad saying, "Just send what you can. We trust you." Trust. That word had always been a leash, disguised as connection. So I opened the last account, the oldest one. A bill I'd been paying since I was 16 and didn't know any better. I stared at the number. It wasn't large, but it wasn't about the number. It was about the story, the one where I was responsible, the one where I was good, the one where I held everyone else's life together even when mine was cracking. And with one quiet click, I took my name off the account. No confirmation email, no confetti, just a pause and a breath. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and said it out loud, not to anyone, just to the room. That's the last one. And it was, because the weight doesn't fully lift until you stop holding it in your name. And that day, for the first time in my life, nothing was due. My birthday came. No texts, no cards, no guilt. And then a knock. It was Ava, holding a cake. No cameras, no spectacle. She smiled soft. "You were never the problem," she whispered. "You were just the first to escape." We lit the candles. We didn't make wishes. We just breathed. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's closing a door that used to open for everyone but you. And this time, when love arrived, it didn't come with a receipt. I didn't walk away to punish them. I walked away because staying meant losing myself one quiet compromise at a time. I used to think love looked like sacrifice. Now I know real love never makes you prove your worth to keep it. If you've ever chosen peace over permission, if you've ever stopped picking up the phone, not out of anger but out of survival, you don't owe anyone an explanation, just one word or one dot. So I know I'm not the only one who left, and finally started to breathe.